Two 4-year-olds are arguing over a toy in a Western classroom. Within 10 seconds, an adult is there, separating them, assigning a turn order, explaining who is right, solving the problem completely on the children's behalf. The conflict is over in under a minute, but so is the learning opportunity. Now picture the same scene in a Japanese kindergarten. Two 4-year-olds arguing over a toy. The teacher sees it happening and does nothing. She watches from across the room, close enough to intervene if it turns physical, but otherwise completely silent. The children argue, they negotiate. One suggests taking turns, the other disagrees, they try again. 3 minutes pass, an eternity in conflict resolution time for a 4-year-old. And then on their own they reach an agreement. No adult told them how. No adult solved it for them. They built the solution themselves, brick by brick, through actual struggle. This single difference, what happens in the 10 seconds after a children's conflict begins, is one of the most powerful and least understood secrets behind why Japanese children grow into adults with extraordinary social and emotional skills. And it has a name. The concept is called Han, and it is so deeply embedded in Japanese early childhood education that most Japanese teachers do not even think of it as a deliberate strategy. It is simply how things are done. From kindergarten onward, Japanese children are placed in small groups called Han that rotate responsibilities, share tasks, and hold each other accountable. This is not accidental. Flonnect, a Han group, might be responsible for setting up snack time this week, cleaning a particular corner of the classroom, or caring for the class plants. The group itself, not the teacher, is given primary responsibility for solving problems that arise within it. When a conflict happens inside a Han group, the cultural expectation is unmistakable. The children solve it. The teacher's role shifts from problem solver to quiet observer, present enough to ensure safety, but deliberately absent from the actual resolution process. The psychological reasoning behind this is something developmental researchers call self-efficacy through earned resolution. When an adult solves a child's conflict for them, the child learns a lesson that sounds protective but is actually quite limiting. When there is a problem, someone bigger will fix it for me. This creates what researchers term learned helplessness in social situations, a pattern where children become increasingly dependent on adult intervention and increasingly incapable of navigating peer conflict independently as they grow older. Western classrooms, despite the best intentions of teachers and parents, often inadvertently train this exact pattern through constant, immediate adult intervention in every children's dispute. Japanese Han groups train the opposite pattern entirely. A child who negotiates their own solution to a conflict, even imperfectly, even after a frustrating 3 minutes of disagreement, receives something that no adult-imposed solution can provide. The neurological imprint of having solved it themselves, the mechanics of how Han actually develops this skill are worth understanding in detail. When children are left to resolve a conflict without adult guidance, they are forced to engage several critical cognitive and emotional processes simultaneously. They must articulate their own perspective clearly enough for another 4-year-old to understand it. They must listen to and process a competing perspective that contradicts their own desires. They must generate potential compromises, a genuinely difficult cognitive task at this age. They must tolerate the discomfort of an unresolved problem for an extended period without an adult rescuing them from that discomfort. And they must eventually accept an outcome that may not be their first preference. Every single one of these processes builds what psychologists call executive function, the brain's capacity for self-regulation, planning, and flexible thinking that predicts long-term academic and social success more reliably than almost any other childhood metric. The contrast with typical Western classroom intervention reveals exactly what is being lost. When a Western teacher steps in within seconds of a children's dispute, they almost always perform the same sequence. They determine who is right. They assign a fair solution, often involving a timer or a turn-taking system, and they explain the reasoning to both children. This is well-intentioned and produces an immediate fair outcome, but the child has not practiced articulating their perspective. The teacher did that for them. The child has not practiced tolerating unresolved discomfort. The teacher eliminated the discomfort almost instantly. The child has not practiced generating their own compromise. The teacher generated it. Every cognitive muscle that conflict resolution requires has been exercised by the adult instead of the child. The fairness of the outcome is real, but the absence of struggle means the absence of the specific learning that struggle produces. Japanese teachers are trained extensively in exactly when intervention becomes necessary. This is not neglect, and the distinction matters enormously. If a conflict becomes physical, if a child becomes genuinely distressed beyond their coping capacity, or if the same unresolved conflict repeats without progress across multiple attempts, the teacher steps in immediately and decisively. The skill being taught is judgment about timing, knowing the difference between productive struggle a child can grow through and genuine distress a child needs protection from. This judgment, exercised consistently across thousands of small moments throughout a Japanese child's early education, is precisely what most Western early childhood training does not emphasize. The default in most Western settings is immediate intervention as the safe, caring choice. The Japanese default is patient observation as the more genuinely caring choice, uncomfortable as that distinction feels to parents raised in intervention-first cultures. So here is what Sodhar wants every parent to try this week, not in a kindergarten classroom, but at home, with siblings, with playdates, with the small daily conflicts that arise constantly in any household with more than one child. The next time your children argue over something small and non-dangerous, try waiting. Not forever, not while ignoring genuine distress, but for 60 seconds longer than your instinct tells you to intervene. Watch what they attempt on their own before you decide they need your help. You may be surprised by how often they find their own way to a solution, clumsy, imperfect, taking 3 times longer than your solution would have taken, but entirely theirs. That is Han. That is what Japanese early childhood education has known for generations. The conflict your child solves alone today builds the social brain they will rely on for the rest of their life. The conflict you solve for them today builds nothing except their need for you to solve the next one too.